All right, tonality is over 90% of your communication on cold calls, much more important than the words you're actually saying, yet most SDRs use the complete wrong tone. And a lot of sales gurus out there will just stop at that and say, tone is important, sound confident, and then send you on your way. But it's like, how do you actually sound confident? What are some tangible techniques? So that's what this video is. I'm going to be giving you actual techniques that you can start using on your cold calls today, tomorrow, whenever you start cold calling next, so that you sound more confident and get better results on your cold calls. So let's get into it. So at a high level, the vibe you want to give off, if you want to call it that, is to be professionally enthusiastic. A lot of SDRs make the mistake of either overdoing it, coming across as too excited. Hey, this is Connor Murray, calling from X company. How are you today? And it's not really that believable. Most people aren't that excited to be making a cold call, calling a stranger at 8:30 in the morning, and it sort of sets off some alarm bells in the prospect's head. Or they don't give off enough energy at all, and they're just like, hey, this is Connor Murray, calling from X company. How are you? If you're gonna make one of the two mistakes, make the first one. I'd rather you come across as overly excited and teach you to dial it back rather than just not having enough energy in the first place. But there's a middle ground in between that I call professionally enthusiastic. Hey Jim, this is Connor Murray, calling from X company. How are you? And what you'll notice about my tonality at that opener is that I started off at a higher tonality and concluded with a more downward inflecting assumptive tone. And that's the key tonality that you need to have as an SDR when making cold calls, is an assumptive tone. An assumptive tone is typically accompanied by a downward inflection that's signaling, hey, this is a formality. I'm going to continue telling you why I'm calling. I merely just need a formality back from you, and then I'm gonna get right into it. You're being a little bit forceful, but that's okay. Most people are naturally gonna be pushing you away when you're a stranger and they realize this person's a stranger, I don't have their number, and they just answered a random call in the middle of their workday. You need to push forward a little bit. A lot of SDRs use an upward inflecting tone instead because they're nervous or not confident. So it's like, hey Jim, this is Connor Murray, calling from X company. How are you today? And even though it's literally the same words, the second one that I just did signals that you might not be respecting their time and this could go on for a little while. The first one with the downward inflection signals that you're not here to waste time. You're gonna get right into why you're calling. The other key to having an assumptive tone is using assumptive language, the actual words you use. So instead of the cold call opening, let's skip ahead to when you actually go to ask the prospect for time on their calendar. Assumptive language sounds something like this. Great, I'm looking to set up some time next week just to get introduced and aligned with your priorities going forward. How does next week work on Wednesday or Thursday? Or great, let's set up some time next week. How does your calendar look on Wednesday or Thursday? I'm looking to set up some time. Let's set up some time. How does your calendar look next week on Wednesday or Thursday? You're turning the path of least resistance into them saying yes rather than saying no. They would have to overcome that tonality that you're offering, that you're expecting this to happen. They would have to break your assumption in order to tell you no. And this is going to dramatically improve your results. And it's just a slight tweak. It's a little uncomfortable at first, but the more you practice it and the more you get used to it, it's going to greatly increase your probability of booking a meeting every time you go for the ask. And contrastly, what a lot of SDRs do instead, and this kills results, is they could nail their opener, nail their cold call script, and then when it comes time to ask for the meeting, they use passive language. So instead of saying, let's set up some time, or I'm looking to set up some time, the most common ones I hear are, great, if you're interested, I was hoping to set up some time next week if you're free. You add in these little caveats like, if you're interested, if you're possibly open to it, if you're free. It usually starts with if, not always, but you're usually giving them an out, and it's because you're just a little uncomfortable. You do this subconsciously, but it dramatically reduces results. You might not think it's that big of a deal, but I promise you, I've had instances where I've trained reps, I've listened to their cold calls, and I just changed that one thing when they went to ask for the meeting, making it like laser focusing in on, don't say, if you're interested, are you possibly open to it, and replace it with that stronger, more assumptive language, and their book rates skyrocketed. So replace passive language with stronger, more assumptive language. I would rather you be overly assumptive and go down swinging than lose because you were too passive. You can always learn to dial it back. So the two critical moments are the examples I just covered. It's important to have an assumptive tone and use assumptive language throughout your entire cold call, including your cold call script. But the two most critical ones are the cold call opener and when it comes time to asking for the meeting, because those are the times where you're going to get the most resistance from the prospect. When they first answer and they realize you're a stranger, you're going to have to push a little bit harder to break through and get into your value statement or your cold call script. And then the other time you're going to be getting the most resistance is at the end of the cold call when you want something from them. You want time on their calendar. You have to assume that that's going to happen in your tonality, but you want to be using assumptive language throughout your entire cold call script. I just think those are the two critical moments. An analogy would be, let's say you're lost, you pull over to the side of the road, you ask someone for directions. Person one is like, yep, it's going to be 100 yards down that way, take your first right, and then it should be about a half a mile and you'll see it on your left. And then person two is like, so I think it's this next right up here, and then you keep going and it should be somewhere about a half a mile down on the left. Both basically said the same thing. They said it's 100 yards that way, take a right, and then it's a half mile. I'm a lot more confident in person one. I'm actually probably going to take their word and just take my first right and go the half mile, where the other person I'm going to say thanks and then drive up a little bit and pull out my phone and search for directions. So you can say the same exact thing. You can use the exact same cold call opening and script, but the tonality is going to determine your results. Two reps could use the same script but get entirely different results, strictly because one is using a stronger, more assumptive tone with assumptive language and a downward inflection, and the other one is using passive language with a more upward inflection. The results can be night and day. So I hope this helped make sense of what goes into a confident tone, and you can start using these techniques. If it was helpful, hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.